Hey everybody, my name is Strix. I've been an Overwatch coach for high school esports for over 2 years. I wanted to make this video because I was kind of inspired by Capitology. Although it's a video that I've wanted to make for a while, um, but I recently watched Capitology's video, How Good Players Die. And I think he got a lot of stuff right in that video, but I think that, the takeaways they're not very obvious for a lot of coaches. Before I get into that, I want to tell you a story. So back in 1922, there was this Soviet scientist named Nikolai Bernstein. He wanted to find out what the differences were in the movements of novice blacksmiths and veteran blacksmiths. Now, his hypothesis was that, since the expert blacksmiths had practiced and perfected their craft, there would, of course, be less variation in their swing, be more consistent. Instead, what he found was that the expert blacksmiths had more variation in their swing. How could this be? Nikolai continued to do research. Eventually, he came up with this idea. What if instead of our brains, constructing some sort of pattern of movement and then enacting it, what if movements were constructed in real time by the body? This is more revolutionary of an idea than it sounds, right? Because, if you're like most people, you were taught either in school or just like by osmosis, I don't know. Um, the what's called the information processing model, the computational model of the mind, which is basically our brain is a computer, right? We take in information from our senses, we have to process it, we have to compare it with some model of the world in our mind, and then the brain sends signals to our muscles to move a certain way. That is how most people think movement works. Bernstein disagreed. There are far too many degrees of freedom that our brain cannot choose in real time how to move, right? It's an impossible computational problem. And if you think about it, this kind of makes sense. How many different ways can your shoulder rotate? Crazy, right? How many different ways can your elbow rotate, extend, and combine all of that into every movement you make in real time? There's no way the brain can have that much computational power. Another thing that he had issue with was, the idea of the perfect technique, the perfect movement. He thought there are no perfect movements. It's all contextual. The movement is constructed as you act out a task, right? Swing the hammer, you're trying to hit a piece of metal. Your outcome, whether or not you hit the piece of metal, is determined by how your body structures itself as it's moving towards completing that goal. This kind of explains why there was so much variation in the way that expert blacksmiths swung hammers, because the more variation you have when you swing a hammer, the better that you can adapt to novel situations. So, for example, I don't just want to make a free throw if I'm playing basketball. That is not the only shot I want to be able to make. It's a good shot to make, but it's not the only shot. I want to be able to make shots from, you know, inside the paint, outside the three. I want to be able to make shots in any situation. And so my movement should not be a perfected technique, right? It should be adaptable. This is one of the cruxes of Bernstein's ideas. Now, how does this have anything to do with Overwatch? When we train our players, when we practice, we are not trying to make robots. A lot of coaches make this mistake. They are trying to have their players do the exact things they want them to do. And this is kind of Capitology's thesis, right? It's not simple enough to just tell them what to do. Hindsight helps nobody. When you're like VOD reviewing, hindsight, it doesn't help nearly as much as it feels like it does, right? So what should we be doing as coaches instead if we can't, you know, point out whatever mistakes and then have our players fix them? What are we doing as a coach? I don't think I've seen a single Overwatch coach talk about this ever. In fact, you want your players to be problem solvers. You don't want them to do, whatever little mistakes that you're seeing. Those are all like emergent and situationally dependent, right? Instead of trying to fix those mistakes like after the fact, outside of the game, whatever, you should be focusing on how do I make my player better at solving problems as they are presented to them in the game. So, for example, and this applies to teams too. I'm a team coach as well as a player coach. So, when you're trying to let's say capture the objective, let's say it's a control map. You're trying to capture the objective. The enemy team, they lose if you capture the objective. So what do? They defend the objective. They try to eliminate you. They try to contest. They try to waste your time so you can't complete the objective, right? That is the problem that the other team is presenting to your team. And the ways that your players come up to a solution is entirely emergent. It's not like they don't pull it from somewhere like deep in their mind. They don't make this conceptual, map every second of the game. They're thinking about, where are the other players at? What are my cooldowns? It's emergent. And so this brings me back to why are VOD reviews so bad? I see so many coaches, all they do is they go through, a replay and they point out every single mistake that, a player or team is making. This sucks. This is absolutely terrible if you want your players to actually improve. Because if you think about it, what problems are they solving? They're not solving anything. They're just watching. Half the time, they're not even paying attention. At least with with my high school kids, they don't give a like they don't pay attention anyways. Half the time, they don't even watch, right? So like, what are you really accomplishing by pointing out all these mistakes, flaming your players for like an hour, sometimes multiple? I've seen multiple hour VOD reviews. Kind of crazy. The VOD reviews, they're fine if you do them by yourself. If you do them like with the team, that's where I have the problem. With the player, that's where I have the problem. Because it doesn't actually, affect anything. Like it might affect what they're focused on next time they play, maybe. How do you know? So here's like my major thesis, right? Instead of, doing endless VOD reviews, going over mistakes, trying to fix the mistakes, that just does not work, straight up. Instead, what should we be doing as coaches? First of all, VOD review, right? By yourself, take notes. What problems are your players encountering that they do not have effective solutions to? If your players are getting permaflanked, right? Then the problem that they're having is that they're allowing themselves to get flanked. That is like a foundational goal that teams should have, is not get flanked, because then you die, right? What we should be doing is next time we have a scrim, next time we have a practice, we should have the intention of, hey, let's try some of these strategies in order to solve this problem that we're having. We don't group up. And so, let's make sure we stay close when we're scrimming. Let's make sure that if they're playing flanks, we should mark the flank, switch heroes, anything that we can do to solve whatever. And the solution will be different every time. I cannot stress this enough. The solution will be different every time. It is dependent on context. You can use a cooldown to solve a flank. You can use your movement. You can shoot them, right? It all depends on the situation. And training your players to become problem solvers in this way makes it so that if they do encounter problems in the future, they can first of all, better recognize the problem. And second of all, actually create effective solutions to the problem. Not just what they've seen before, but completely new problems. This is what we want for our players. And this brings me to my final point. The number one problem with Overwatch coaching is intentionality. How do we get our players to intend to do something and then perform towards that intention, right? The problem is most players and even most coaches don't know what the hell to do in any situation. It's difficult, right? You have to track cooldowns, ultimates, the number of players, where all the players are at. It's a lot of information to keep track of, and there's a lot of different things you can do. But if you train your players to become adaptive problem solvers, then any situation, any problem that they encounter, they will be able to come up with an effective solution on their own. No coaching required, no flaming them in the VOD review. Anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. Um, I see a lot of coaches make this mistake, and it's completely valid. There's so many, like, every single coach online just does VOD reviews, right? They don't really do anything else. You don't really see what the practices are like. You only see the VOD reviews, and that's why so many beginner coaches only do VOD reviews. It sucks. It really does suck. Um, it's not a good way to make your players better. It just doesn't. It's very inconsistent. Your players become rigid, unadaptable, um, and they can't do anything without your input, right? I want my players to be independent of me. I want them to become good Overwatch players, not good robots that I puppeteer from the background, right? So that's my thoughts. Um, Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. I'm more than willing to have my ideas contested online, God forbid. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.